I've spent my entire life living in the shadow of my family's golden child, my older sister, Claire. From the day I was born, everything I did was met with a polite nod or, more often, a sigh of disappointment. I was clumsy, awkward, not enough. Claire, on the other hand, could do no wrong. Straight A's, sports star, everyone's favorite. Our parents, bless them, made it abundantly clear who they loved more. Birthdays, awards, even minor accomplishments. They celebrated Claire as though she were the pinnacle of human existence, while I got a shrug and a half-hearted, good job, I guess. Growing up, I learned quickly, don't try too hard, don't show ambition, because it would never be enough. I remember my high school graduation. Claire was valedictorian, naturally, and our parents threw her a lavish party. Mine? A pizza from the corner shop and a perfunctory, congratulations. I tried to brush it off, I really did, but the sting never left. Every time I got a compliment, my parents would undercut it by comparing me to Claire. She would have done it better. She never struggles like you. By the time I hit my 20s, I was desperate to prove myself outside the toxic confines of my family. I moved to New York, took a job in marketing, and tried to build my own life. It was liberating but terrifying. For the first time, I could make decisions that were mine alone. Yet, deep down, the insecurities never fully disappeared. I was conditioned to feel unworthy, to expect betrayal, to see myself as the perpetual loser in every story. Then came Jacob, my high school sweetheart, my partner in crime, the person I trusted more than anyone. We moved in together in Brooklyn, got our first apartment, and I started thinking maybe, just maybe, things could be different. I allowed myself to dream about a life where I was the hero of my own story. I was careful, meticulous even, because trust didn't come easily to me. But I loved him in a way I hadn't loved anyone before. And for a brief, shining moment, I thought I had found my place in the world. Claire was still in the background, of course. She married young, had a perfect life in Manhattan, and somehow always managed to appear just when I felt I was gaining confidence. She was charming, radiant, and infuriatingly, impossibly perfect. And I hated that I still wanted her approval, even after all these years. That's when the cracks started. At first, they were small, a late night, a missed call, but the feeling of unease was sharp. My intuition screamed that something was off. And then, one evening, I found the text. I don't even know why I looked. Maybe a pang of suspicion, maybe the instinct that never failed me in my family. The message was from Claire, sent to Jacob. It wasn't innocent. It was deliberate, seductive, full of laughter I didn't recognize. My world didn't just tilt, it collapsed. I remember standing in the middle of our apartment, phone in hand, staring at the message over and over, hoping it wasn't real. But deep down, I already knew. The person I trusted most in the world, the person who promised me forever, was betraying me with my own sister, my own flesh and blood. The betrayal wasn't just intimate, it was nuclear. It erased every ounce of self-confidence I'd built, every scrap of dignity I'd scraped together in the years of being the family's black sheep. I spent that night crying on the kitchen floor, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, wondering how my life had come to this. How could Claire do this? How could Jacob? And more importantly, why wasn't I enough? I know, looking back, that's the point when I hit rock bottom. But it's also when the story begins. The story of reclaiming myself piece by piece from the ruins they left behind. The morning after I discovered the texts, the apartment felt like a cage. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. Jacob walked in, casually humming, completely unaware that my world had shattered just hours earlier. I confronted him immediately, shaking, my voice cracking with rage and heartbreak. He didn't deny it. He didn't even apologize. His words, slick and rehearsed, were something I'll never forget. It just happened. I didn't plan it. You'll understand someday. Understand? Understand that the man I trusted, the person I thought loved me, had slept with my sister? That I had built a lie? No, there was nothing to understand. Only a void where my future had been. Claire, on the other hand, didn't even try to hide. She called me the next day, her voice sweet, almost mocking. I know this hurts, but you can't blame me. He came to me. The audacity of her words made my stomach twist. She had always had the world wrapped around her finger, and now she was playing puppet master in my heartbreak. I realized something then. I had spent my whole life trying to earn approval from people who didn't care about my happiness, and it had finally destroyed me. I left the apartment that day and never went back. I didn't take much, just a few clothes, my laptop, and the little money I had saved. I moved into a tiny studio in Queens, working double shifts at a marketing firm that barely paid enough to cover rent. I cried myself to sleep most nights, imagining every humiliating family dinner where Claire and my parents would brag about her life while pretending I didn't exist. I lost my sense of security, my home, and my pride all at once. For weeks, I felt like a ghost wandering through my own life. But something in me refused to die. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was stubbornness. I couldn't let them win completely. I threw myself into work, learning every aspect of marketing I had ever been curious about. Nights became my laboratory, weekends my battlefield. Slowly, painfully, I started building something that was mine. I networked, I studied, I applied for positions I once thought unattainable. The humiliation I'd endured gave me a strange fuel, a determination that clawed at every bone in my body. Months passed. Jacob and Claire faded from my life, at least physically. I blocked them on everything, deleted numbers, and refused to answer emails. I didn't want to know how their lives were progressing because part of me still remembered how much it had hurt to watch them succeed while I was the failure. And that memory became a catalyst, a secret engine pushing me forward. By the end of the year, I landed a position at a top marketing agency in Manhattan. It wasn't just a job, it was validation. People were finally noticing me, listening to me, respecting me. I started receiving praise for campaigns I led, bonuses for ideas I executed flawlessly. For the first time, I wasn't the girl living in Claire's shadow. I was someone else entirely, someone who mattered. But the transformation wasn't just external. I began to confront the years of internalized shame. Therapy helped me unravel the knots of self-doubt that my family had tied so tightly around my soul. I learned to recognize manipulation, gaslighting, and betrayal, not just from others, but from myself. And with every session, with every small success, I felt a sense of power returning. Not the power of vengeance, but the power to choose, to decide what I would accept in my life and what I would not. Little did I know, the real test was yet to come. I thought I had left the past behind me, thought I had escaped the suffocating grip of my family. But life has a twisted sense of timing. It started with a call from my mother. At first, I didn't recognize her voice. It was softer, almost timid, completely different from the sharp, dismissive tone I remembered from my childhood. "Sweetheart, I know it's been a long time, but we need your help," she said. That phrase alone, "we need your help," made my blood run cold. "What do you mean?" I asked, cautiously. My hands were trembling, though I tried to hide it. "It's complicated. Your father, we're struggling. And I know it's a lot to ask, but can you send some money, anything, just to help us get by?" I froze. I could hear Claire giggling in the background. My mother hadn't even tried to hide it. The woman who ruined my life, who betrayed me in the most intimate, soul-crushing way, was now expecting me to bail her out, to rescue them after years of neglect, ridicule, and outright humiliation? I didn't respond immediately. I sat there, phone in hand, replaying every memory of my childhood. My birthdays ignored, my achievements dismissed, the times I cried myself to sleep because I wasn't good enough. And then I remembered Jacob and Claire, their betrayal, the years of heartbreak, and the nights I thought I'd never crawl out of the wreckage they left behind. A part of me wanted to scream. A part of me wanted to hang up and never speak to them again. But another part, a quiet, determined voice, reminded me of how far I had come. I had clawed my way out of the pit they had thrown me into. I had built a career, a life, a sense of self that was entirely mine. So I said what I hadn't thought I would ever say. "No, I'm not sending you money. I'm not helping you. I spent my whole life proving myself to people who never cared about me. I'm done."
There was silence on the other end, and then a sharp, almost hysterical cry from my mother. "After everything we've done for you?" I laughed, bitter and cold. "Everything you've done for me? You mean all the times you tore me down, ignored me, and favored Claire? That's what you call everything you've done for me?" And with that, I hung up. I blocked their numbers, their emails, even social media accounts. I didn't want to hear their excuses or their sob stories. I had nothing left to give them, and I realized in that moment that I didn't need their approval, their love, or their validation. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. The anger that had fueled me for so long transformed into strength. I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. I had my career, my friends, and my dignity intact. I wasn't the black sheep anymore. I was someone who had survived betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak, and emerged victorious. Weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that Claire's life wasn't as perfect as she made it seem. Jacob had left her for someone else, and their marriage was crumbling. My parents were struggling financially, trying to reconcile their mistakes. And while part of me felt a flicker of schadenfreude, it wasn't malicious. It was just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that karma had a way of finding its mark.
For the first time, I realized something profound. I didn't need revenge, because life itself had a way of balancing the scales. And as I poured myself a glass of wine, sitting in my sleek Manhattan apartment, I allowed myself to smile, not out of malice, but out of victory. I had survived, I had thrived, and I had finally put myself first. By the time I turned 30, I had become a completely different person. My career had skyrocketed. I was leading campaigns at one of the most prestigious marketing firms in Manhattan, mentoring younger employees, and finally earning respect for my creativity and vision. My apartment, once a cramped studio in Queens, was now a spacious loft with floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the skyline that felt like a metaphor for how far I'd come. I didn't just survive, I thrived. It wasn't just the material success, though that was sweet. It was the internal victory that tasted even better. I had rebuilt myself from the wreckage left by betrayal, heartbreak, and years of being ignored. I didn't need my family's approval or anyone else's. I had earned my own love, my own validation, and the truth of it was, I never felt stronger, more confident, or more alive. Then came the day I ran into Claire, or rather, she ran into me, quite literally, at a marketing gala. I had been presenting our latest campaign to an audience of high-powered executives when I noticed a familiar voice behind me. I turned, and there she was, Claire, all poise and perfection, but this time there was a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, a shadow I had never seen before. She tried the smile, lightly brushing off our history with a casual, "It's been a while, hasn't it?" But I could see it in her face, the anxiety, the guilt. Jacob had left her months ago. Her career had stalled, her so-called perfect life crumbling like a house of cards. For the first time, she wasn't untouchable. For the first time, she was human and flawed. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I simply looked her in the eyes and said, calm and firm, "I hope you've learned something." And then I walked away. The power wasn't in revenge. It was in knowing I had survived, succeeded, and built a life that she could never take from me. Later, I received an unexpected email from my parents. They had heard about my success through mutual acquaintances and wanted to reconnect, to explain themselves, to ask forgiveness, and maybe even subtly hint at financial support. I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. And then I smiled. I typed a polite, concise reply. "I've moved on. I've built my own life. I wish you well, but I will not be helping financially or otherwise. I hope you can find your own path." I hit send and felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a freedom I had never known as a child, a teenager, or even in the aftermath of betrayal. The past, with all its pain and humiliation, had forged me into someone unstoppable. And the best part? I didn't need their recognition, their approval, or their gratitude. I had already won. Sitting in my apartment that evening, watching the city lights flicker like tiny beacons of possibility, I allowed myself to truly relax for the first time in years. I was no longer the black sheep. I was the architect of my own destiny, unbroken, undefeated, and finally at peace.
And as for them, the golden child, the betrayer, the parents who had abandoned me, life had a way of balancing the scales, and I no longer needed to participate in their reckoning. I had my victory, my happiness, and the certainty that I would never allow anyone to diminish me again. I had become the person I was always meant to be, strong, independent, and unapologetically myself. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Claire was struggling. Her marriage in shambles, her career stalled. Jacob had moved on quickly, leaving her with the chaos she once inflicted on me. My parents were still trying to patch together their lives, and this time, no one was calling me for help. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not revenge, but closure. I had built a life entirely my own, one no one could ruin. The black sheep had finally become the golden one, not because they approved, but because I had chosen myself. Sitting on my balcony, the city lights shimmering below, I smiled. I was free, strong, and unshakable. The past had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. I had survived, I had triumphed, and that was enough.